Ladies and gentlemen, good morning if you're hearing us from Europe, just like myself. Good afternoon if you're hearing us from Japan or the Asian region. Welcome to the webinar. My name is Marcel Langone. I'm project manager for Solar Plaza, and today with Haruki Yamaya and Marco Alves, we will zoom in into Japan's feed-in tariff retroactive measures and considerations for operating in a competitive landscape. Also, welcome if you're hearing us at a later stage, if you're listening to our recordings. So, a brief agenda for today. I will give a short introduction on the webinar and also on our Solar Asset Management Asia conference. Afterwards, we will have Haruki Yamaya reflecting on the scope of the feed-in tariff retroactive measures that were recently implemented by METI. And also, we will dive into analyzing the impact for project development, finance, and construction. Afterwards, Marco Alves will reflect on how to operate at lower feed-in tariffs. So what does this mean in terms of evolving strategies and trends in a market with squeezing margins? Afterwards, we have still some minutes for Q&A in which you can ask your questions to the speakers of today, and we will approximately end the webinar in 1 hour from now. Just a brief introduction about Solar Plaza for those of you that don't know us that well. We're a B2B conference organizer in the solar industry and also a content platform for the industry. So we were established 15 years ago, and from 2004 we have organized over 100 events worldwide in the 5 continents, and this year also in Australia. We have a network of over 60,000 solar PV professionals and growing every day. So the webinar of today is also a pre-call to our Solar Asset Management Asia conference, which will be held in Tokyo next 30 and 31st of May. This is the leading conference dedicated to all the topics related to the operational phase of solar plants and portfolios. It's a bilingual conference, so interpretation is provided throughout the whole conference. We're expecting over 300 attendees from the whole solar value chain, and over 50 expert speakers will be on stage sharing lessons learned, case studies, and international experience, and also over 20 sponsors and exhibitors at the show. So if you haven't registered yet, the very early bird expires next Friday, 8 March. So head to the website and book your place. Also, appreciation note for the sponsors of the conference that makes, of course, the conference, but also our content possible. Also, you can see now on screen a selection of attendees that will be joining us next May to Solar Asset Management Asia. So yeah, we expect to see you there as well. Furthermore, me and the team will also be at PV Expo, so we'll be, of course, excited to meet you there. And we have a networking event on Friday, 1st March, to learn, share, and also for some drinks. So we will have small working groups on distributed generation models. Also, you can register online through the link, and the last tickets are available. So if this is interesting to you, also make sure to book your tickets. So before we start, some practical notes. If you have any technical issues, please use the chat box on your right. Also, for the Q&A session, we invite you to pose your questions on the question box, and you can do this at any moment. You don't need to take notes if you don't feel like you need it, because the presentation slides and the recordings will be available afterwards. So, presenting the first speaker of today, he's Haruki Yamaya. He's a senior analyst on the PV Business Consulting Department of RTS Corporation. He's responsible for one of the most read monthly reports that analyzes the developments of the feed-in tariff program and other topics related to the Japanese market. And Haruki has also provided consultancy for different institutions and organizations. Welcome, Haruki-san. I will give you the keyboard right now, and the floor is yours.
Thank you for kind introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for attending my presentation. My name is Haruki Yamaya, Senior Researcher of RTS Corporation, a Japanese consulting company exclusively engaged in PV power generation for more than 35 years. Today, I'd like to talk about overview of Japan's FIT retroactive measures. The Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, which we call METI, decided new measures for FIT-approved PV projects which have not started operation. The new measures were proposed in METI's committee to reduce public burden because there were a lot of PV projects which have not started operation. Most of them were approved more than 4 years ago. Their purchase prices are very high, more than 30 yen per kilowatt hour. In the latest tender in Japan, the lowest winning price was 14.25 yen per kilowatt hour, about 13 US cents. There's a big gap between the purchase price of the projects approved in the past and the purchase price of newly approved projects. The members of METI's committee raised the concern that public burden would be increased a lot because of the older projects. This figure shows trends in cumulative PV approved capacity as of the end of March 2018. Please focus on the left side of the figure. Japanese government started the FIT program from July 2012. Purchase price for feed-in tariff was 40 yen per kilowatt hour in fiscal year 2012. The Japanese fiscal year starts in April and ends in March. Based on the FIT Act, the government newly set purchase price for next fiscal year according to the cost data submitted by project owners. Knowing that the purchase price will be reduced next fiscal year, a lot of projects rush to get high purchase price at the end of fiscal year ending March. So in purchase price in fiscal year 2012 was 40 yen per kilowatt hour, and cumulative capacity reached 20 gigawatt. And in fiscal year 2013, the purchase price is 36 yen per kilowatt hour, and cumulative capacity jumped up to 66 gigawatt. And in fiscal year 2014, 32 yen per kilowatt hour and more than 80 gigawatt. And we can see the significant drop of the approved capacity at the end of fiscal year 2016. Japanese government started a new FIT from the beginning of fiscal year 2017 and canceled the approved projects which did not have grid connection agreements with utility companies. Approximately 13 gigawatt projects were canceled. Most of the canceled projects were small projects, 10 to below 50 kilowatt. As of the end of fiscal year 2017, cumulative approved capacity was about 70 gigawatt. And this is a very important data showing the status of operation of FIT-approved projects, which are 10 kilowatt or more by fiscal year as of the end of March 2018. Total approved capacity was about 68 gigawatt and about 34 gigawatt not started. capacity of approved projects in fiscal year 2012 was about 15 gigawatts, and commission rate is close to 80%. The METI's committee members found a big problem in the data of fiscal year 2013 and in fiscal year 2014. The approved capacity in fiscal year 2013 is about 26 gigawatts, but commission rate was about 50%. The approved capacity in fiscal year 2014 was about 12 gigawatts, and the commission rate was about 40%. This means 36 yen per kilowatt hour and 32 yen per kilowatt hour projects not started operation exceeds 20 gigawatts in total.
Haruki-san, before we start with the 2 points that you have here, I believe we have 2 poll questions for our audience. Let's give a few seconds to show on screen. Okay, and I will read the question to our attendees. In your opinion, have the retroactive feed-in tariff measures been positive for consolidation of the solar industry in Japan? Yeah, I believe that we can show results. And yes, so it seems to be a very polarizing opinion. What do you think, Haruki-san?
Yes, retroactive feed measures is positive because a lot of PV projects wants to rush to completion, and all the project with high tariff possible to give up the project based on these new measures. It leads to the release the grid capacity reserved to all the projects. So it will be a big chance for newly approved project. That's all.
Perfect. Let's then launch our second poll question to our audience. You can see now on screen, is this statement true for you? I have a clear understanding of the framework and deadlines of these new retroactive feed-in tariff measures. Yes, in part, or so-so. Let's wait a few more seconds for the results. Okay. Wow. So we see that there's still many doubts.
Yes.
And great, of course, that you're joining the webinar, because Haruki-san will now develop on this. And back to you, Haruki-san.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to introduce you the draft of public comments. Sorry. This is the important part of draft of public comments. The figure shows that target projects for new measures. In 2016, METI sets additional rule on approved projects based on the date of connection contract. Approved projects whose date of connection contract was by July 31st, 2016 did not have the deadline for starting operation, but these projects cannot change PV modules. On the other hand, approved project whose date of connection contract was August 1st, 2016 onwards has a deadline for starting operation. The deadline is 3 years from the date of approval. If these projects cannot keep the deadline, the purchase period will be shortened by the length of time exceeding the deadline. Thus, the projects can change PV modules to reduce the cost. Subjects of new measures are projects which have not started operation with the connection contract signed by July 31st, 2016. The measures will be applied to the projects that have not started operation for 4 years or more after approval. So fiscal year 2012 to 2014 approved projects, total 11 to 17 gigawatt are subject to the measures this time. The applicable fiscal year will expand annually by one fiscal year. Fiscal year 2015 approved projects will be added in fiscal year 2019. METI proposed that purchase price should be applied not at the time of approval, but at the time of starting operation. Basis of judgment of application of purchase price was set as timing of starting of preparations for starting operation. METI also set a new procedure which is called application for starting grid connection construction. The standard point of setting the purchase price is the day when power transmission and distribution operator received application for starting grid connection construction without any inadequacy. Applicable purchase price will be the one for 2 years before the date of receipt of application. This is a very important point. Then power transmission and distribution operators automatically determine the earliest date of starting grid connection, and requirements for application for starting grid connection construction were to have the rights to use the land, to have the necessary approval, etc. I will introduce the final decision on the requirements later. This chart shows the image for the enforcement of new measures on April 1st, 2019. METI proposed in the draft of public comments. First, I'd like to explain the case when the conventional purchase prices for the yen 36 yen or 32 yen per kilowatt hour is ensured. If the application for starting grid connection construction is received without inadequacy by March 31st, 2019, the conventional purchase price will be sustained, and the deadline for starting operation, which is 1 year, will be set from April 1st, 2019. If the project has not started operation by the deadline, the purchase period will be shortened by the exceeding period. This decision was made after discussion at the Procurement Price Calculation Committee. Next, I'd like to explain the case the conventional purchase price is reduced to 21 yen per kilowatt hour. If the application for starting grid connection construction is received without inadequacy between April 2019 to March 2020, the conventional purchase price will be reduced to 21 yen per kilowatt hour, and the deadline for starting operation will be set 1 year from the day the first application for starting construction was received. If the project has not started operation by the deadline, the purchase period will be shortened by the exceeding period. This slide shows the cases where a new or second application for starting grid connection construction must be submitted. We should remember these cases because if the power transmission and distribution operator requires power producers to apply again, the date of receipt of application shall be changed and the conventional purchase price cannot be maintained. I'd like to introduce you all of the cases. First is in cases where the contents of the received application for starting grid connection construction were found out to be factually inaccurate. Second is in cases where the contents of the documents related to application for starting grid connection construction are changed. Third is in the cases where the scheduled date of starting grid connection determined by power transmission and distribution operator is changed. This is very critical for the project because power transmission and distribution operator can automatically determine the earliest date. So we are not sure whether the project can meet the scheduled date or not. There was a huge risk for the projects to be reduced at purchase price. Fourth is in case where the PV project's business plan for approval related to application for starting grid connection construction is changed. Developers and power producers were worried that they cannot buy or sell project after the application. The draft following the public comments has been amended on December 5th, 2018. METI made a decision on the new measures. As mentioned earlier, more than 1,000 opinions were submitted to public comment. Strict conditions in the draft were greatly eased based on the opinions. First, METI newly sets the criteria to exclude large-scale projects which have already started full-scale development. METI set receipt of notification of construction plan as a requirement of 2 megawatt or projects under the Electricity Business Act. In principle, the measures will not be applied to the projects for which notification of construction plan has already been received as of December 5, 2018. METI also set exceptional case. Please confirm it later. A grace period for 2 megawatt or more project is set. Please remember the deadline of application for starting grid connection construction. We need to submit application by deadline to maintain the conventional purchase price. The deadline for less than 2 megawatt is February 1st, 2019, and deadline for 2 megawatt or more is around the end of August 2019. And METI sets the longest grace period for the projects subject to environmental impact assessment and the ordinance, because it takes a very long time to complete EIA. The deadline is around the end of February 2020. And we can also confirm COD deadline. Requirements to apply for starting grid connection construction are as follows. Title to land use has been acquired, necessary permission has been acquired, and after submission of application for starting connection construction, application for approval change of field project's business plan shall not be made until the start of operation. But minor change, which is called notification of change, is allowed. Acceptance of applications for starting grid connection construction was started from January 11, 2019. Based on the opinions from power producers and financial institutions, the mechanism was eased to maintain the purchase price even when the scheduled date of grid connection start is missed. METI aims to minimize the risk of purchase price reduction due to force majeure, etc. Before applying a starting grid connection construction, purchase price will remain unchanged, even if PV modules were changed. I'd like to explain the new rule on change of PV module of the projects. Projects approved between fiscal year 2012 and fiscal year 2014 and whose commission deadline will be newly set are allowed to change PV modules on and after December 10, 2018. This is a very important point that change of PV modules must be conducted prior to the application for starting grid connection construction. The projects which meets the criteria for not applying the measures can select either no COD deadline and same PV module, or 1 year deadline and change of PV module. If the project selects the latter, METI will apply the new measures to the projects. Before closing my presentation, I'd like to introduce you to our publications. We publish several reports in English. The first one is a flagship monthly report, PV Activities in Japan and Global PV Highlights. This report covers the latest developments of the Japanese PV market on a monthly basis. The second one is PV Market in Japan 2018, which comprehensively covers the Japanese PV market on a yearly basis. The third one is Forecasting PV installed capacity in Japan toward fiscal year 2030. We made a forecast of the Japanese PV market based on our detailed research by electric utility as well as by application. The fourth one is simulation of output curtailment of PV power generation in Japan from 2020 to 2040. We made a forecast of output curtailment of PV power generation in Japan by capacity range and by service area of electric utilities. For more details of these reports, please access our website. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Haruki-san. Thanks for the insightful presentation. We have some questions coming in. I do also have some questions for you, but for now, we will save those for the Q&A and go right away to Marco. I would like to present the next speakers, Marco Alves. Also, for everybody that has not posed their questions, please feel free to do it. The questions are always open. Just do it on the question chat box on your right. And yes, Marco Alves is an O&M business consultant for the Japanese market. Marco has 18 years of international experience in managing assets and O&M, including 7 years in the solar industry. He co-founded and is general manager in MTX Solar, and Marco has previously led Martifer Solar's global O&M and service business. Welcome, Marco. I'm unmuting you and sharing you the keyboard, and also now the floor is yours.
ありがとうございます、Marcel-san. So, konnichiwa to to all the ones coming from Japan. As Marcel was saying, so I have experienced business in solar in more than 23 countries and established O&M operators in more than 14 countries, from Latin America, Japan, Jordan, along Europe. So big changes are being announced for Japan, a bit similar to what we have seen in other countries, one of which I can remember is, for instance, Spain, where strong measures have been applied, changing the assumptions for all the ones doing business in the solar. I would like to put in perspective, if you allow me, sorry, yes. Okay, I would like to put in perspective the O&M for the feed-in tariff, as we may see it as from the shoes of an operator. So the main drivers are technical performance, and the target is to maximize the output. So usually the main contractual KPIs that we can see in place are driven by performance ratio or availability. Anyhow, we try to make a measurement of the energy produced based on time or based on irradiation. The main SLAs, the service level agreements that condition such an overall performance, are very much correlated with the time we take to detect problems, with the time we take to respond, arriving to the plant, with the time we take to reestablish, and with the time we take to repair. So if you see, it's very much conditioned with our ability to detect remotely, to mobilize people and the resources required to make diagnostic, and with as well our ability to mobilize what is required to reestablish production. That will determine the availability of a PV plant, the number of times we have failures and interruptions in production, and the amount of time in average we take to reestablish it. Along with the technical performance of an equipment, it will allow us to drive what is supposed to be called the performance guarantee. So usually O&M contracts are driven by availability guarantee or performance guarantee. If you see in detail, if we look for understanding what drives such a result, well, we are required to preserve the technical performance of a global system. So make sure it is not available, and when it is unavailable, then to rapidly reestablish production. So for an operator to be doing so, he needs to have qualified supervisors, so people and systems to remotely detect. It requires to have qualified technicians nearby the PV plants. The time we take to detect, the time we take to attend the PV plant, it's also conditioned by the distance, average distance they are from the PV plants. Also, the time we take to make a proper diagnostic depends on how qualified and competence have these technicians. Then the time we take to repair will be very much conditioned to our access to the know-how of manufacturers in case of required corrective maintenance. So for this, we are very much, as an operators, depending from monitoring systems that are not constrained by different technologies, different adapters, different SCADA systems, and that we can integrate as a whole. An operator is very much often required to control more than 100 PV plants at the same time. So he needs to have a global vision of all the plants running and of each one independently. So there are very much big challenges in this business, mainly driven by the technological immaturity. Everything keeps on very fast updating and innovation cycle. We don't see an inverter that does not change for machines in the market change very much rapidly. They're very much rapidly updated. You don't see an inverter that is stabilized for 5 years in this industry. Even the modules keep on changing. The spare parts, because of such a rapid innovation cycle or updating of technology, also quite often become obsolete and difficult to access. Moreover, and it comes difficulty everywhere, usually solar plants are very much dispersed along the countries in very much remote areas, and the low volume concentration drives to some price inefficiency, especially, and this is also a strong constraint for operators in Japan, when the plants are small. A 2 megawatt PV plant does not absorb a manpower of a man alone by itself. It comes as well as a constraint for the operators, the construction deficiencies. They are dragged along the life of the asset. Usually problems not properly solved along the construction time will result in strong hurdles and inconvenience for the operator. I've experienced along my life that quite often on the early stage of a PV plant, 60% of the problems can be driven by construction deficiencies. So if you realize that if you want to make a proper integration for this O&M chain of value, you are required to have supervision systems, supervision people, technicians that understand about electrical integration and compounds and equipment dispersed in the country, and furthermore with access to the know-how of the manufacturers. If an operator doesn't have it, it becomes difficult to be efficient along the whole chain of value. Furthermore, if we look around to the new business models around the world, so to understand how different can we act and how different can we think, looking for maximizing efficiency, I would like to give you a very small flavor of how is O&M driven for the new context where there is no FIT, like in Europe. We used to have FIT. We used to have FIT rounding values of the 40s, like in Japan. But nowadays, we don't have. So we are looking for procuring PPAs or selling to merchant. When we sell to PPAs, we are seeing prices for the energy that are valued in 10% of what FIT used to represent. Nowadays, PPAs in Europe are around 40 euro cents per megawatt hour. And 6 or 9 years ago, it used to be 10 times more. So O&M operators are required now to focus on what is the target of the owner. Quite often, the way O&M is done is affected by the power market, the way it is regulated. For the pricing, the remuneration mechanism is not the same, is not constant along the hours of the day, or may not be. The volume, there is a certain amount of energy that is agreed to deliver to someone, an off-taker, that may change along the time of the day. Before, with the FIT, we just considered the annual production that was estimated. Now, we can even have different targets for production depending on the day of the week or even the hour. So performance is still a concern, but there is a new concept. It's the shape or the profile for the demand. And there is a balancing risk that will come along the price for this remunerated production. So looking from the top, yes, an O&M contract is driven by new concerns. Not only performance is there and volume, as it was for FIT, but now also the shape, also the way the energy that is produced by the PV plant is remunerated is of a big concern by the operator. And furthermore, the TSOs are requiring from the O&M operators to define and announce how much they are going to produce every day. So one day ahead, they need to share to the TSO how much they are going to inject into the grid on an hourly basis. So it's not rocket science. So it's the market is responding to the need, and we see deviations of less than 4% of these forecasts. So it's a disruptive change that has come to this O&M business driven by the changes on the FITs. So if we look closely, new KPIs arrive. So high performance and availability, driven by weighted averages, that may be based on energy prices differences. And there is the commitment and the liability for forecasting accuracy. Moreover, the O&M operator needs to be ready to change to the new shapes to be announced by the renegotiations of the PPAs. So some new SLAs arriving, the ability to dispatch. So quite often the O&M operator is called to respond to the TSO for adjusting power injected into the grid. So not only maintenance is a concern, but now much more than in the past, operation is a concern. It's not enough to make it connected. We need to adjust its level of production and output on based on requirement of the TSO. So time to reestablish and response to demand. Also new SLAs coming to the table of the O&M. So it's a big challenge that obliges not only prices being reduced severely for the O&M contracts, but also a very much more active role is required from the operator. So now we are being called to make more for less, as it will come in Japan as well. In a few years coming, we will be required to more actively participate in the control of the output. Now we are just being called to adjust to the price, if we see it from the top. So how to make it more competitive. So one of the things, everybody is being called to take a role to adjust to the changes. All the players in the market still need to make money. I can assure you, O&M operators in Europe still have their margins. Usually, from my experience, a margin of an operator can be around 15, 16, 17, 18%. So it's usually a 2-digit margin business. It's a service business. It's normal. It is risky, yes, but risk is possible to be mitigated with proficiency. So also investors need to adjust. Also manufacturers need to adjust to the new trends. So from investor's shoes, investor should drive and not be driven. He should be more aware of his asset condition. He should centralize management. Also, because he drives the impact of costs for the operator. So he is a part of the reason why sometimes we cannot be more efficient. He should look for more, extracting more from the assets. He should question, can I produce more? Yes, he can produce more. He should question performance. Can I extract more performance from my assets and take it to new limits? It is possible. He will give new conditions to operators to do their role differently and more properly. It should also reduce uncertainty from his model assumptions. It's his responsibility to confirm that risk management and claim management are properly in place. And then, after looking for efficiency and increasing productions and mitigating risks, he should look for reducing his operating costs. I remind you, Europe prices for O&M were around 40 euros per kilowatt peak in 2008. Nowadays, they have been reduced more than 70%. Nowadays, Europe is talking about prices below 10 euros per kilowatt peak. So also you ask, but what happened? Are they making less money? Not necessarily. Also, the way of doing O&M is changing. And furthermore, the costs of doing it have been reduced. I remember 2010, cleaning modules used to have a cost of 1.5 euros per kilowatt peak. Nowadays, it costs less than 0.7. I remember that grass cutting used to have a relevant cost. Nowadays, we make some chemical treatment. Nowadays, we also make vegetation control using animals. So we are being pushed for thinking differently. Modules cleaning became more automated. Modules cleaning also became not done based on estimation from the early stage of an asset, but conditioned by the benefit. So for centralized management and for the investors, I would recommend that somehow you start doing some benchmarking of your own asset. You start following closely what is the performance of your asset on a monthly basis, on a weekly basis. So I would recommend, if you think on a portfolio level, then you can consider that even spare parts can be designed and driven differently. So mitigating the risk with spare parts for a portfolio is not the same as if you were thinking on a plant-by-plant basis. So for improving performance, start doing some cost-benefit analysis on each project, benchmarking of machines of performance. A Mercedes is a Mercedes anywhere place in the world. like a Toyota, is a Toyota in Japan and is in the Toyota in Portugal. So performance should be studied and compared and benchmarked, and the investor should look for more. So start doing some risk mitigation. You have modules. Replacing modules will be highly costly. You need to follow up with your operator how is the condition of the modules in the warranty period and anticipate the replacement of defective modules. As well, from the inverters, you need to follow what is supposed to be the normal behavior and on time make the proper cleaning. So for increasing production, O&M contractors should pay more attention on time to detect. Usually, if there is not an incentive for doing so, well, they may have less tension and doing it less carefully. It may happen. As a time to respond, O&M operators tend to concentrate the people into a single city in the country, but people are supposed to have short-time response to deficiencies and interruptions in production. So for that, they should be close to the assets they operate. So also for reducing operating costs, I really would advise that much more benefit for the cost is drives the decisions of an asset manager. Agree with the operator that a certain swirling should correspond to a certain benefit and a certain cost for doing the cleaning. So follow the swirling impact and activate cleaning based on the benefit for the cost. Do not buy cleanings that you do not need, but also don't stop doing cleanings or you may jeopardize the warranty of your modules. But furthermore, operators also need to change. They need
Marco?
to be more, yes?
I believe we have a poll question related to the topic, so we can also engage the audience in this discussion.
Okay.
And then we will still have 3 minutes, Marco, to round off on the conclusion. So you can see now the question on your screen. So where can technology improvements or efficiency gains be most impactful on OPEX reduction? So in your opinion, is this on inspections? Is this on model cleaning, on vegetation treatments, or on data analytics? And we have covered some of these topics and given some considerations about this already. So quite curious to see what you think. And we can show some results. Marco, what is your take on the results?
I totally agree with the result. I would choose 2 as well. Yes, I totally agree from the results, and I was about to mention it. Technology is bringing analytics to a new era. So it's allowing operators to go further, understanding what is going wrong and what are the trends for the behavior of my systems, anticipating a little bit the cost and the events that impact disruptively on production. But also in inspections is one of the items of my presentations. Quite very much expensive inspections, especially for modules and thermograph inspections. They cost a lot of money because they require highly specialized technicians walking along big distances with sometimes difficult access. So it's a very much expensive intervention that can be assisted by the machine, and so make a first high-level understanding of where are the problems so that we can manually dive and get more granular perspective and detailed perspective of the reason why. So I was coming to say that O&M should be budgeted differently. There should be more accuracy. So when we estimate what is the cost of O&M or the price for a client, we should make the projection of the preventive maintenance, understand how much hours we take to make those interventions for the preventive maintenance plan, and then make an estimation of the failures we are going to face. And here, thank you, Marcel. I agree with the people assisting to this webinar. Analytics will help us compiling and getting the trends for historical data already available. Also, we should question to manufacturers RAMS analysis, reliability, availability, maintainability, and safety for estimating what is the failure rate of the equipment and how much we are going to spend to make such a repair. So we should also make operations more cost-effective and efficient. I would advise operators to internalize highly added value operations, equipment repair. It does not make sense to go to a PV plant and just confirm we cannot repair and call another engineer to come 2, 3, 4 days later so that he can repair what could have been repaired by the first one in the first visit. It generates downtime, but also to the client, to the owner, but also it generates higher cost for the operator. If we can make agreements with manufacturers, also we will reduce the cost of their warranty and maximize the return for the owner. So I would as well recommend in Japan to maximize the benefit for a cost that we must have, the chief electrical engineer. There is more value to be extracted from the chief electrical engineer, though I know there's a specific reality in Japan. Reduce the cost of ineffective work. Quite often, operators go to PV plants without knowing what to find. So remotely, please make some remote diagnostic so that you can understand what resources you need and be more effective once going to the plant. In Japan, cost of cleaning vegetation treatment, is very, very high. So it affects dramatically the cost of an O&M contract for the operator. I would suggest reconsider doing some chemical treatment. I know it is very much sensitive, but I know one IPP in Japan that is doing that for 80% of its portfolio with good results and also the consent of the neighbors for the land. So then, as you were saying, Marcel, digitalize and automate processes whenever possible. Please make your monitoring systems more intelligent. You should not spend much money with people making remote supervision because they can be helped with automatic and processed alarmistic. So to see the things that the eyes take much longer to understand. Furthermore, and not taking much time from you, revise your operations management model, make it more long-term. You should confirm, are these people aligned by processes that you should have designed and all integrated by good systems and good softwares, not only to make monitoring, but also to implement the whole workflow for the repair and visit to the site. Reduce unnecessary workload and effort. Please activate the warranty management processes. Some of the things are called O&M, but should not be paid by the operator. We need to make the investor to understand, and we need to call the manufacturer to take its role. Also, we are learning from Europe. The less intrusive, the better. Sometimes a too much intensive preventive maintenance plan will generate rework. Electrical is very much unstable with connection, disconnection, connection, disconnection. So then instability may arrive and failures due to too much intrusive interventions. So present more valuable offers and offer proposition to asset owners. Understand what they are really looking for. Do not sell a product, sell a solution, and much more driven on cost-benefit relation with your investors. So,
Marco, we need to round off, so we'll give you still a last few seconds to make your conclusion.
Thank you very much. I'm finishing myself. So please consider that bringing corrective maintenance integrated with your offer, so repairing what is possible to be repaired on the site, you are saving money for your client, you are increasing the production, you are reducing the downtime, and you are reducing the investment on spare parts because you are able to replace it modularly by yourself on site. And on the left, reconsider really what is your client looking for. So don't offer what he asks necessarily, but put yourself on his shoes and bring a valuable proposition where you generate value to the client. Understand if he's looking for a short-term contract and just focus on price, or if he's looking for mitigating risk and securing performance on the long term. This is it, Marcel. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marco, for the insightful presentation. And just, yeah, that we have still some questions and are almost near to the end of our webinar. So I would still like to, yes, pose some questions for you and for Haruki-san. And the first question for Haruki-san. You have shown this the draft, this first draft, and then the adjustments. Was that satisfactory to the private industry? Those changes?
Yes. Actually, the METI's amendment is METI's amendment responds to the request from the power producers and financial institutions, but Japanese PV manufacturers didn't expect METI will allow to change PV modules.
Yes, so still some compromise was made. There is another question also commenting that the feed-in tariffs are still extremely generous in Japan. So what do you think are key reasons why these projects are not realized?
Do you mean why the old project cannot start operation?
Yes, with high feed-in tariffs.
High feed-in tariff. Yes. Yeah. The main reason is difficulty to get permission for development.
Is that environmental? Is that related to the grid? What permissions are we talking about?
Yes. One, how can I say yes? First thing is to get land use contract, because very it's difficult to aggregate land from a lot of owners. And next is yes, permission for forest development, and also environmental impact assessment is very difficult to complete.
Thank you, Haruki-san. That was clear. For Marco, we have seen these incredible reductions in Europe. Would you dare to make a prediction for Japan in the coming 3 to 5 years?
Well, I would rather not. There are also some specifications that are very much proper from Japan, not also the cost of labor, but also, Marcel-san, the cost of construction due to the contribution of civil works. So nowadays in Europe, the construction costs around 60 euro cents per watt peak, while in Japan, it's, I presume, still more than the double. So I think we will still see a difference from these two markets, though I expect a significant reduction in the O&M, especially for the operators that start concentrating volume. I think a relevant change is coming, as we also see a new market for operators rising up and shining in Japan. So the boom for O&M is starting in Japan. So I think those ones will achieve higher efficiencies, so new value propositions for the investors. Those will make it.
Exactly. So we're seeing increasing competition, and we're seeing indeed the boom on O&M, but also companies specializing on very specific activities. There is another question, Marco. When we look at the O&M for a market that is shifting from a feed-in tariff to merchant, the question is whether the internal rate of return, the IRR of the asset, isn't that more important than the PR as a KPI?
Yes, Marcel-san. PR is not anymore a good measure. It doesn't fit. I just recall you that in merchant, the price for energy is higher in the early morning than in the moments of high radiation. So it's not any more important to secure higher production when you have higher irradiations. So it's more important probably to secure it, productions on early stage of the day and end of the afternoon. So PR is not anymore sufficient.
Indeed, that's very clear that the complexity changes. A question perhaps for both of you, also related to one of these questions and the discussion that we just had, was what is specific? What is in Japan that drives the cost constructions up? What are the main factors?
Haruki-san?
Oh, yes. What is the cost to drive up the, what is the main factor to drive up the cost?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, it's very good question. And how can I say? Yes, in Japan, the PV module can be, it can be said PV module, the price of PV module is high, but currently the price of PV module is global standard in Japan. So one possible reason is labor fee for construction, and in the large project they need land construction or very high land construction. It costs a lot. Yes. Sorry, it's one reason to drive up the cost.
Understand, Marco. Still, any consideration here on construction costs in Japan?
It's a different paradigm. It's a closed market. So even the number of competitors or players in the market is not the same size and diversity we see in Europe, where it's easier to start a company and have even permission to construction. So furthermore, you will see the big agents that influence the market of civil works taking a leading role in a market that probably is not their preferred one. So there is a relevant incorporation of the companies that have their activity in civil works influencing the price, and also, as you say, and Haruki-san says, the price of labor, but not just the price of labor. If you make it comparable to the ones influencing the prices of O&M in Japan, I would say that also the price of labor, but two more factors. One is the way we are doing vegetation control. It's not good enough. The other one is the way we are, it's a lack of concentration of volume. You have a country with several gigawatts, but there is not a single player doing by himself O&M to 1 gigawatt. And then there is a third factor, which is the influence of the cost for the chief electrical engineer for such a narrow scope with such a high impact on the cost for the O&M. I don't know if I answered you.
Yes, excellent, and thank you for that. And with that, we round off our webinar. So thank you, Haruki-san. Thank you, Marco, for being here today, for accepting our invitation. Was a valuable experience for me, and I hope also for all the participants. Thank you for your active participation. We still have some questions, but I will make sure that I forward them to you, and that you can get in touch related to those questions. So yeah, I appreciate that. And in case there is any question, any remark, please feel free to either reach me or Saori Minamino. Our contact details are now on screen. So we very much look forward to meet you either in Japan next 30 and 31st of May, or at any other of our solar asset management conferences. We will be in San Francisco next month and in Sydney by the end of June. So wishing you a great day, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you very much, Marcel. And for the ones who may need any further assistance, I will be happy to reply by email to all of them, or even to attend their needs by meeting them in Solar Asset Management event at Solar Plaza in Tokyo next May.
Thank you very much.
ありがとうございます。
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。